can start. No, exactly. Okay. So I have exactly 40 minutes.
Yeah, we need to start at 9 sharp because it's been
Fine. Yeah, you're very strict.
and already do the announcement. We want our own talk to be on mute, right?
You have an announcement?
Yeah, just a few things.
Okay.
Maybe we should see what announcement.
Not yet. Afterwards. Stop.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see you all survived the last night's party. So before the actual talk, I should encourage you to sign in for the lightning talk at the whiteboard, which is in the lobby. And you can later vote for them. And the final schedule for the day will be published 1 hour before the lightning talks. And now please welcome Yaniv Bronhaim, and he'll be talking about integrating oVirt and Foreman.
Hello. My name is Yaniv Bronhaim. I'm with Red Hat for the last 2.5 years. I'm a developer at the oVirt team. oVirt, it's open virtualization. I will talk about the product if you're not familiar with that. It's more about managing virtualization in your data center. And Foreman, which is a data center management, which allows you to provision and configure and manage your server in your data center. I won't talk all about those products because we have only 40 minutes. I will just show you how we integrate between those two products to allow empowering of your entities that you have in your data center, which I mostly like to call bare metal to utilize hypervisor with cloud integration, which means using two cloud products to having hypervisor ready to run virtual machines. So what is bare metal? If we're talking about a physical hardware that you have in your data center, this is the bare metal, and you don't want to go to this room because it's not so comfortable, it's cold, and probably you prefer to do everything remotely. So we will talk about the life cycle of servers, what you need to do to initialize your server in your data center. Then we will talk about what is Foreman, how can you use it, what is oVirt and virtualization, as I said, how we can manage the virtualization with oVirt, and how do we integrate between the two to make it easy for you and for your IT in your enterprise, or if you want to use it personally, it's also nice to have to provision bare metal. When we're talking about the life cycle of a server, it all starts with provisioning, which means to install the operation system on the host itself before it has anything on it. Then you need to configure it to run the application that you want to run, and then monitor it to know the status of your applications. Sometimes you want to change the configuration until you discard the server and don't use it anymore. So the approach goes like, this is your data center, and you get new server for your data center that you want to install, or even a bunch of servers that you want to install, all of them together. And what do? First of all, you connect them to the network, right? You get an IP address that allows you to remotely communicate with your server. First, I didn't said that the initial parameter that you can count off is only the MAC address that you have on your physical hardware. So when you connect them to the network, you can recognize your server only by the MAC address. After you have it connected, you can install the operation system that you want by Pixie boot or manually with physically with a CD-ROM or whatever approach that you intend to do. And then you need to have someone that will come with his laptop and start to install the application that you wanted to have. It starts to label each of the servers to the MAC addresses. So if something will happen to one of the services, you will have the ability to recognize where is it and how to reach the server and fix it, whatever it is, even if you lost the communication to the server, right? After you have this part, you label everything and you know how to find everything, and it's quite easy. Then you can install whatever you want, if it's a web server, DNS, even oVirt, DHCP, and all rock and roll, and the guy can manage it from remotely and have a good life. Simple as it is. Until something happens, and one of the server is not reachable, or the operation system doesn't start, panic, and you don't know what to do, and the guy come again and need to search for where is it. So he looks for his list, which sign A5C to one of the MAC addresses, but he has a typo and he can't find it. So what you can do, this what causes you to go to the room again and search for it, which you want to avoid, mostly. So the easy way, of course, is doing remotely. How do you do it remotely? First of all, you want to have ability to get your bare metal provision by remote management to register somehow the server when you connect it to the network automatically to one product that will centralize all the information that you need about this hardware. Then you want the ability to locate the physical hardware afterwards to know where it is and what the specification of that hardware. And then you want to configure and monitor it for the whole life cycle of the server. So for that, we will use Foreman. If you never heard about it, I will explain shortly about what is Foreman, how does it help, and how does it do the exact process. First of all, this is a server with Foreman installed on it. And when you get the new bunch of servers that you want to install, you connect them to the network. And Foreman includes Pixie boot on it. I will explain about the entities inside, what Foreman exactly includes in few more slides. It gets automatically a tiny operation system based on oVirt node, if you know what is it, which is RHEL without many features includes in it. So it's only tiny operation system which start automatically, which called Foreman Discovery. When it sends the discovery boot, when the servers finish the boot process, it sends all the specification it requires for the administrator to recognize the host, starting with the IP address that it got from the network, the basic hardware information by DMID code, and the MAC address, the time it was booted up for the first time, and you get a list for all your new servers that you just connected to the network. Very nice and easy. Very nice to know what did you connect. Even though if you don't do the exact process of connecting them to the network, you can always know if someone else connected another server to the network. And again, the server doesn't need to include anything on it. You just connected it and it got the operation system from the network. When you get inside one of the servers, you see all the details, which are quite informative and can help you to decide what do you want to do with this server. Depends on the CPU, the RAM, and you can do really a lot of things that related to storage, networking, integration with other products, the Virt lifecycle itself, as I said, a migration process, doing it live without disturb the I/O that it runs. For example, if you have the virtual machines and you want to do some maintenance to your hardware, you don't need to stop your virtual machine or somehow interact with the user to stop his work and we're doing something, we need to shut down the server. No, you don't need to do that. You just do it by the UI, saying that you want to migrate your virtual machine to another server. This is called a migration, live migration. We have other features such as memory management, which allows the operation system to manage same pages as one bulk and doesn't need to multiply it for many times. So it's really enhance the abilities of the hardware. We'll get about some of them. When we're talking about oVirt, the main actors are the servers themselves, which are called hypervisors. Hypervisor because we install something on them. It's the operation system and the application that expose the API to allow all the network storage manipulation and running the virtual machines and the lifecycle of the virtual machines. Virtual clusters mentioned here because when you declare the environment, mostly you want to declare the ability of migration. If you have something to your host and you want to migrate the virtual machine, you need to have another host inside your virtualization scope, which we call cluster, to allow this migrate. The host must be with the same hardware, same specification, not same hardware, same specification, with same connectivity to the network and to the storage. That's why we need to have a specific entity for that, which are the clusters. Virtual machines, also known as guest, if you're not familiar with that. This is how oVirt looks like. Very intuitive. You have the virtual machines that you can manage. You have also roles, the administrator view and user view. If the user can see only its own virtual machines, or you are the administrator that want to manage all your hosts, you have the tree view here, very easy to manage. Searchability, if you have thousands of VMs and you want to get only the VMs in, in Brno, you have the ability to have only the view that you want. You manage the host. This is, for example, the user view, specific user view. It has only 3 VMs here. It also has the ability to manage some sort of partial resources, and then it can start or destroy a VM by its own. This is oVirt. I just mentioned it. Same as I mentioned, Foreman, very abstract and not really drilled down, just for you to know that you are able to do many, many things inside oVirt, starting with scheduling, quality of service that you want to declare. The network is very easy to configure. You don't need any additional or advanced Linux knowledge. You don't need really to SSH to the host, do something manually. Everything can be done by the web interface. If something is missing, you're more than welcome to suggest it, to add it to the web UI. Even the upgrade of the host, we plan to do it by the UI. Like if those are the hosts, you will get notified that you have a security update or update to the virtualization API itself, and you will be able to do it remotely. This is about oVirt. So back to our data center, back to our guy that wants to initialize the data center. To start working with virtualization, the flow goes like totally like this. You get a new server, and you want to make it an hypervisor, which able to run the virtual machine and to be managed by oVirt to expose the API that you need. What do? You connect it to the network, same as you did before. You get the IP address, and you're starting to provision it. Now, forget about what I said about Foreman. Now we don't have Foreman. We have only the guy and the oVirt web UI that we install somewhere. So you install manually, or you have a Pixie boot that installs somehow the operation system on it. Now you get the IP address, and you're going to the UI oVirt. Simple as it is, you just had your the IP address and the root password. We need the root password because we're doing deploy phase that I will explain in a minute. And then they're all starting to be deployed, which means we're starting to install everything that requires to run the operation system. It installs something that's called VDSM, which is the main package that we use that exposes the API that allows all the memory, virt, scheduling, storage manipulation on the host. It's written in Python. That's what I do, by the way, mainly. I work on this project. So it's a process, a service that run on the host, expose the API and do all the internal manipulation. But a part of that, it install also the network configuration that you need. You need specific routes to allow to get also the VDI, the visual interface for the virtual machines, the connectivity to the storage. It installs the certificates that require to talk with the engine, the servers that you need to allow some of the scheduling processes. And that's basically what makes the host an hypervisor and ready to use for virtual machines. Now you can start a virtual machine. For example, this simple screen for a long time ago. Now it's more advanced and they have many more options. But this is the screenshot that I had. You choose the template. You choose the network interface that you wanted to connect to. Yesterday I show oVirt much more deeper, so you would, if you want to know more about how to use the interface, I can show you. By the way, we have if you're going to the oVirt wiki, you can download something that's called LiveCD, which includes an installation of oVirt that allows a USB live installation that allows you to start up the computer directly to oVirt engine and start virtual machines, and you can play with it and see how simple it is to configure things like network. So you describe a virtual network that correlate to one of your physical NICs, and you use this virtual network to connect it to the VM, and then you use it inside the virtual machine. You have more options here to define, such as how it will start, how do you gonna get the console to it, the boot options, and many more. What is that? Another screen that just show how easy it is, and then you start the virtual machines. But do we really want to go there? Do we really need to do it? No, we saw that we have alternatives that can do it easier for us, but we don't want to manage two applications, and we don't want to know two different management systems, because as you know, management systems have a lot of options, and it's starting to be confusing, and you need even to teach your guys how to work with the management system, and it's starting to be complex. So we decided to integrate between the two and make it possible to also provision with oVirt. If you configure your Foreman in your system, it's much easier to do. How do you do that? We expose something that we call external providers that we use. Simply, you just had the UI of your Foreman that already configured on the network. It retrieves the certificates of the Foreman, retrieve all the information from oVirt, and allows you to use that during the configuration of the environment that you do. They talk to each other by REST API, full REST API, and when you connect to when you add new servers to your data center, as we saw before, they automatically will send all the information that they can retrieve from the server to Foreman. When they did that, oVirt can reach it easily, get all the information it requires, and expose it by the UI. This is how it looks like when you add new host. Now you have the options to use Foreman host providers. We don't show all the information that possible to see through Foreman because it's not important. The important stuff that you want to expose is first of all, you want to see what servers are available to use and a bit of the information they have, like when did you install the server, what are the MAC addresses that you have to use, and the basic of the specification, depends on the use case. This is how it looks from Foreman UI, but you don't really need to do it. Just to mention, this is where it cover. The host group, which, as I said, the full set of configuration that you plan to put on the host. Again, this host has nothing on it, and you can decide what when you define the host group. As I said, you define what operation system, what Puppet classes it will run, to which domain do you want it to join, and then after you the host group that you want to use, you define how it communicates with oVirt as well. This is the compute resource that I showed you before. You need to define compute resource for oVirt, which also get the certificates and authentication permission to communicate back with oVirt. And then what happens, generally, oVirt asks for Foreman to provision the host with a set of configuration that you declared inside your host group. It sends API request. Simple as that. It's starting to provision the host. The host become in status that we call installing OS. You you will get a notify in the event log, which you will see in the screen. I didn't have a screenshot of that it started to install the operation system on the host. When it's done, automatically Foreman send API request by additional plugin that we call oVirt host deploy plugin, which says basically to oVirt start to deploy this host because it's ready to use, it's ready to being provisioned, which I said before, it's the phase where you communicate with the host, run all the SSH YAM installation that requires, configure the networking, configure the keys that you need to use to allow this virtual machines manipulation. And basically it just do all the initialization that you need. Good to say, but important to say that you can do everything by Foreman, but if you're already oVirt user or you more concerned about how to utilize the virtualization and you don't really want to use such complex management system as Foreman, because Foreman allows you much more than just provision the host. It's also about the configuration, the Puppet classes, the domain, how to declare it. If you don't really want to do it directly with Foreman, this is much easier way to do these processes, from my opinion. Then, as you saw before, oVirt UI allows you to do many scheduling, quality of service, migration, memory management on those hosts. You have all those abilities ready to use on this server. And that's it. They can still communicate with other than that, good to specify, you can also use already provisioned hosts that you already have operation system on them. If they already managed by Foreman, you can pick them from the UI also and do the same thing with already provisioned hosts. It will just use those hosts and the details of those hosts. You must have the password to them or SSH key installed on them, the public key, and then it will start to deploy those hosts instead of installing them by yourself. We plan much more integration between Foreman and oVirt because Foreman. By the way, I didn't say that Foreman. It's also part of Satellite 6. If you're more familiar with Satellite 6, so Foreman, the part of Foreman in Satellite, allows you to do the provisioning phase and manage the server. But we aim to expose much more abilities through oVirt. We don't want to take over all the features that they supply, but if it's comfortable to show it in the UI of oVirt, we plan to do it. such as if you have new upgrade to do, the RATA information that satellites expose, we will plan to show it in oVirt as well. We also want to enhance the ability of provisioning, such as VM provisioning, if it will be possible. We'll see. Maybe select bunch of servers together and do it in one click. Although you can write scripts to do it, because we expose everything I show in full REST UI, so REST API, so it's really easy to write a very simple script to do it for a bunch of servers together. But in the UI, you need to do it one by one. But we'll prove it. So I don't have much time, so to summarize, I just talked a bit about Foreman and oVirt. Can say much more about it. All this process allows you to do the management for a server with no physical intervention. You don't need to do anything manually. You just do everything from the web interface that you get remotely. The ability to discover the host and start them as an hypervisor to run virtual machines. This is the feature page if you want to know more details, to know how to set it up. To install oVirt engine, you can also get to the page describe how to do that. It's quite easy. It comes with CentOS or Fedora if you have it. So it also has a repository for oVirt, which includes the latest version of oVirt, which currently is 3.5, but we're working on 3.6. So you can go to this wiki page and find the details how to install it. Yum install oVirt engine. The installation is very interactive, quite easy. We give a lot of value about the simplicity of how to install oVirt. Foreman, from my experience, it's a bit difficult to install because it includes a lot of administrative. It's a complex of services that you're trying to manage by one management. So sometimes, if you're not familiar with declaring the named D servers or the DNS, the bind, it can be complex if you encounter some of mistakes during the, in the config themselves. For me, it's quite mature, less than oVirt, but they have many users. All the projects under GitHub. They work with everything with GitHub, and they have the IRC channels. They are more available in the IRC channel than mails, as far as I experience. And oVirt, which is my territory, we are more active in the users list. If you will register to the users list, you will enjoy all the updates about what we plan to do, the test day. Even before each version that we publish, we do a test day, community test day. It allows the community to check our new features, experience with that, and maybe give their input about how we can improve it. We give it a lot of value, and we want to make it more useful, more user-friendly, and you always can also contribute and help us to make it that way. This is about oVirt. Those are the main important links that we have. We're on IRC as well. And that's it about my side. If you have any questions. Did it in time. Yes. To repeat what?
Before answering, can you repeat the question?
If you have any questions. No, he just wanted this slide to see it again. We want to take a picture. Okay, so, yes.
What about VLAN support?
VLAN support?
Yes.
In oVirt, you can define all sort of configuration for your network. I don't have the screens for that, but it's really easy. You click on the OS and you define the correlation between the physical NIC to the virtual network that you describe. It has a very easy to use screen. I can't show you it here because I don't have the communicator. You just click on the OS and see it. I really encourage you to try the all-in-one setup. You'll see how easy it is. You don't really need the knowledge how to do it with Linux. It's just for you, you describe the network and you just drag it to the physical interface that you have.
One more question. Do you have control when you are deploying virtual machine? Which host it will be?
Of course. You know, in the web UI, when you deploy a virtual machine, you can run anywhere inside your cluster, right? It can be on any of the hosts that you have it to the.
You can specify this. I want
to pin it to one of the hosts. Of course, you can. When you create a virtual machine, you can say in the box where you declare the virtual machine. You can also do it, but afterwards, if you did a mistake and the virtual machine started somewhere and you don't want it to run there, you can always go back to the forum and set it to run on a specific host. Even though you declare it to run on specific host, it still have the options to migrate to another VM if you lost the connectivity to this host. By the way, we have another ability that if the host is not reachable, if we're talking about the virtualization side of oVirt, if the host, the communication to this host failed or something happened and you can't reach it, we have also the ability to fence it with power management abilities. You can declare another device that allows you to restart or shut down the host if you really need to do it. Still no physical intervention with the physical hardware. So thank you, guys. Oh yeah, this is a copy.
We have the presentation of the USB stick.
Yes, second.
Okay, thanks a lot.
If you can get me this kind of stick, it would be very good.
It's really cool.
Have fun.